We're grateful to StreetLight for partnering on the webinar. Their insights data is a powerful part of our broader data strategy because it helps us see the full visitor journey around major events, how people arrive, how they move across the region, and what they do after the final whistle. So I've already been introduced, but I'm Jay with EnterpriseKC. We're a business-led, results-oriented think and do tank focused on enterprise development, innovation, and high-opportunity job growth in Kansas and Western Missouri. And as data and analytics partners of KC 2026, who's the group overseeing the strategy and delivery of host city responsibilities, we're using StreetLight to help leaders across the region make smarter, faster decisions about visitor movement and the overall experience. So before we jump into charts, I want to go through a couple of housekeeping items. For anyone that is unfamiliar with Kansas City, it truly is a bi-state region. So what I mean by that is I'm currently sitting in my office, which is in Leawood, Kansas, on the Kansas side of the state line, but I could kick a soccer ball into Missouri from here. So state line is the dividing road between the two states, but visitors experience Kansas City as one metro. And why this matters is that our goal isn't only to host matches, but it's to create an experience and memories that people carry with them. So when visitors have a smooth, welcoming trip, they talk about Kansas City and they want to come back. And that's how a global moment turns into repeat visits, and it shapes how leaders and talent see the region. So with that context, here's the simple question. What do our biggest weekends already tell us about the visitor journey? And let me quickly explain the approach that we used with StreetLight. And that'd be the next slide, Haley. So here's how we're approaching this. We're not trying to predict a global soccer event perfectly. We're using real Kansas City weekends as our guide, what a typical summer Saturday looks like, what a busy weekend looks like when events overlap, and what changes when an event becomes a destination and people travel from farther away. So one quick note as we go through this, StreetLight estimates vehicle trips, not people. So keep in mind that many fans arrive together. With that, let's look at a real stacked weekend example. So what you're seeing here is on Saturday, June 28th, 3 major venues were active, and StreetLight estimates about 28,500 vehicle arrivals tied to those venue footprints. A typical summer Saturday across those same venues is about 14,800, so it's almost double. And the mix that day helps explain why. So the Royals were hosting the Los Angeles Dodgers, who are the reigning World Series champions, at Kauffman Stadium. Sporting KC played Real Salt Lake at Sporting Park, and the Country Stampede Festival was underway at Azura Amphitheater with Luke Bryan and Miranda Lambert in the lineup. And the point here isn't to dwell on traffic, it's that Kansas City already has weekends where activity scales quickly across the region when major events overlap. And that gives us a grounded way to think about what a global event week can feel like and how the visitor experience can extend beyond the stadium. Next, I'm going to show how movement on these big weekends naturally spreads across the metro and why the opportunity shows up across the whole region. So one thing we've sought to illustrate is that Kansas City already functions as one connected visitor experience. And this chart shows visitors' home state during typical summer weekends. And across all 3 venues, you see a meaningful mix of Kansas and Missouri arrivals. The reason we highlight this is simple. Visitors don't plan a Kansas trip or a Missouri trip. They plan a Kansas City trip. They choose hotels, restaurants, and attractions based on what's easiest and what they're most excited to do. That's why working together across the region matters so much for the fan experience, and why measuring consistently helps everyone tell the story clearly after 2026. And next, we're going to zoom out and see how far people travel when an event becomes a destination. So what we see here is that on typical summer weekends, the share of vehicle trips traveling 100 miles or more is meaningful. About 27% at Kauffman Stadium, 12% at Azura Amphitheater, and 8% at Sporting Park. But when we look at destination style events, you can see the increase. The Chiefs-Bills AFC West Championship playoff game jumps to 38% traveling 100 plus miles, and the Sporting KC versus Inter Miami match is 35%. Here's a simple signal, right, that the audience is broader than our two-state region. In both of those Arrowhead examples, about 17% of visitors came from outside Kansas and Missouri. So that's a real-world hint of what happens when something becomes must-see. In the Inter Miami Sporting game case, Sporting moved the match to Arrowhead Stadium and drew 72,610 fans, which is the kind of demand shift that changes the travel footprint overnight. Why this matters: when people travel farther, they often stay longer. And when they stay longer, they experience more of Kansas City. And that's where the best memories get made, right? The restaurants, the districts, the after-match plans, the parts of the trip people talk about when they go home. So the final slide here that we'll go through is what I think is the final piece of this particular analysis. If you can, yeah, there we go. And that's because it's where the global soccer opportunity becomes real. It's the experience doesn't end when the match ends. So after the final whistle, visitors don't disappear. They obviously go somewhere next. And this slide is a simple visual of that idea. These are Arrowhead Stadium's top routes, the movement network that lights up after a major event. It's not about reading every street. It's about seeing how the experience spreads across the metro. And that after window is where Kansas City becomes a story people want to repeat. It's the meal after the match when someone tries Kansas City barbecue for the first time. It's discovering the soul of the city, like the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum and the historic 18th and Vine District, where visitors leave with a deeper understanding of Kansas City's story. And it's also the modern Kansas City story, the places that signal innovation and future, being able to say this region builds big ideas, and pointing to institutions like the Stowers Institute can change how leaders and talent think about Kansas City long after the match is over. For a global audience, those moments are what will define us. Hospitality, culture, history, innovation across the whole region, stitched together into a collection of unforgettable memories. And this is also where StreetLight has been genuinely important in our strategy. It helps us understand the full visitor journey, not just arriving at the venue, but what happens after, so we can keep learning from real weekends and keep improving the experience. And that's the takeaway. If we make all of the experiences memorable and welcoming, Kansas City doesn't just host the biggest sporting event in the world. We turn a global moment into sustained impacts.